I'm very pleased today that we've got Arron Aatkar with us from Edison, who's their chief healthcare analyst, and has already done many of you recognise him because I think you've done one webinar with us already.
Yes, yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Yes,
on
that's
the
right.
DNS space, actually. Yeah.
So he's going to try and sort of give the big picture stuff now for those of you who are interested in the healthcare market. I think you've done some recent work. Is this quite a recent report?
Yeah, we had a report out recently on the sort of broader healthcare sector, and yeah, one on the CNS space as well.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, over to you. And are you okay if we take questions while we go through, or do you want them at the end? It's entirely up to you.
We'll do them at the end, if that's okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you very much to ShareSoc for asking me to present today. It's always a pleasure to talk about the healthcare sector and indeed hear from exciting companies at the forefront as well. So I'm here to talk today about some reasons to be optimistic about the healthcare sector. Going to start by looking at the current market positioning, so essentially where we are now and how did we get there. Going to touch upon some of the fundamental drivers of growth, and then most of the talk's going to talk about sort of innovative themes that are creating investment opportunities, because I think that's the most exciting parts. Now, sort of headline figure just here is that the healthcare sector is experiencing one of the most significant deratings in 35 years, yet fundamentals remain robust. So we see a bit of a mismatch between sort of where valuations are now and where the sort of promise lies in the future. Now, the sort of, hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll agree with me that the sentiment indicators are flashing green. Now, a little bit about myself first, for those that don't know me. My background and formal training is actually very much in the sciences. So I've got a master's in chemistry and a PhD in chemical biology. I also spent 4 years working at GSK before taking on my role at Edison. Now, at Edison, the focus is very much for me European biotechs, working with stocks on sort of a bottom-up basis. But a key part of my role as well is looking at the global healthcare market and some of the key trends that sort of keep that ticking over as well. So hopefully you're all familiar with Edison, but in case you're not, the company's been going over for sort of 20 years now, I believe, and it's sort of been a bit of a pioneer in making investment research accessible. We've got over 250 clients that we work with, and while we pride ourselves on the equity research side of things, we do a lot more than that as well. So we do investor engagement, digital marketing campaigns, and as I said, we pride ourselves on having sort of open access content so people can learn about the companies that we work with. Now, we've got a selection of some of the stocks that I work on just there. As I said, mostly European biotechs, but we do have sort of global coverage overall. And what's quite an exciting part about my job as well is on top of the individual stocks that I work on a bottom-up basis, we also work with some healthcare-focused investment companies, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with, a couple at OrbiMed and BB Biotech as well. So a fun part of my job is I get to see the healthcare sector from both sides of things. So how did we get here? Where are we now? I don't want to get too bogged down in the sort of details and figures and data, but essentially the key thing to look at with these two charts just here is sort of seeing that spike around about the 2020-2021 mark. And that was following a lot of excitement in the healthcare space around about the time of the COVID pandemic. But what we saw after that was, as I said, one of those biggest drawdowns that we've seen in a long, long time. And that's pulled a lot of investment away from the sector. There's a sort of record number of companies trading below the cash on their balance sheets, and valuations are at a low. That's a bit of a right sizing following the pandemic. But essentially what that means and what it could represent is an attractive entry point into the healthcare sector. Now, touching upon some of the key structural growth drivers, as I said, valuations are low, but the fundamentals remain robust. And a key driver for that is the fact that aging populations are creating a high increased demand for new and innovative healthcare products. And essentially what that's doing is coming at the same time as technology's never been better. So we're seeing a renaissance in innovation as well. And all of that, again, at the same time, the M&A activity is set to rise. So I'll touch on some of the details on that later on as well. I've got a little nod towards AI at the bottom there because it's impossible not to give a talk without it these days. And essentially what that's sort of trying to say is that that's a key driver upon all stages of the healthcare sector, the drug development market and beyond, that sort of fueling that projected market growth as well just there. So the innovation renaissance, it's sort of impossible not to talk about the healthcare sector without acknowledging the fact that one of the key markets in the healthcare sector is the US. And while there's sort of been say some political headwinds. I'm not here to give a political talk, but actually the overall belief is that the Trump administration is net positive for the healthcare sector. You can see that rise in FDA approvals, and hopefully you'll agree that FDA approvals is a key metric by which to measure the health of the sector. That spike in 2017 was after Trump's first appointment, and we're expecting the same sort of trend to continue now. And we're sort of seeing that higher level of FDA approvals, which hopefully reflects increased innovation and real progress just there. The dip in 2022, we believe, is sort of due to a bit of a lag following the COVID pandemic. So what I'm trying to highlight with the table at the bottom just here, this is an idea I actually borrowed from one of the healthcare-focused investment companies we work with, but I think it's a nice way to summarize the innovations that are coming through in the approval side of things. So just highlighting here a few FDA approvals from this year that highlight a series of firsts. So we've got Vertex Pharmaceuticals with a new drug for moderate to severe acute pain, Soleno with a new therapeutic for Prader-Willi syndrome, and Gilead Sciences with the first sort of preventative treatment for HIV. Now, what's exciting about these is the fact that they represent significant firsts. So with Journevax, that is the first and only non-opioid oral drug for pain. I'm sure everyone's got their own experiences with pain, but the fact that there's something there that's non-opioid based is super exciting. Prader-Willi syndrome, you may or may not have heard of it. It's quite a rare sort of chromosomal condition that causes defects, but until recently there was no treatments for this. And the fact that we've got something there now is super exciting for those that are affected. And again, with Gilead, it's the first preventative treatment for HIV. Now, this table is far from comprehensive, but hopefully gives a bit of a snapshot as to what's exciting with approvals for new drugs at the moment. Now, as I said, I'm going to try and sort of cover off what I think at least is some exciting therapeutic areas looking forward at. And there's been a bit of overlap with some of the talks that we've had today, which is encouraging to see. But essentially what this chart's sort of trying to show is therapeutic area broken down by expected changes in sales and their indication sort of share, so the sort of their segment size across the overall healthcare market. And the key thing to take away from this is essentially that one big blob in the top right-hand corner just there, that corresponds to oncology. That remains the fastest growing segment and one where we're seeing a real increased rate of innovation. And again, that's sort of due to sort of increased demand with global with aging populations and whatnot. The second one just there is neurology. So that's 2 out of the 3 indications that I'm going to dive into today. I'll let you have a little guess about what the third one might be, but we've already covered it in a way. So oncology, a lot of people think about cancer, they think of it as one disease, but this is actually, as I'm sure you're aware, a quite broad range of complicated different subtypes of disease. A lot of the time when people hear cancer, or at least back in the day, that would have meant a death sentence. But with improved fundamentals and innovations in healthcare, we're starting to see that sort of shift towards thinking about it as more of a chronic disease than a death sentence. Now, historically, cancer treatment limited to sort of surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. But ultimately now there's a lot of exciting new technologies that are working their way through pipelines that should create more beneficial outcomes for patients. So to reel off a few just here, we've got cell and gene therapies. These are sort of still associated with quite a high price tag, but ultimately they've got the potential to offer that better sort of risk-reward profile compared to chemo alone. So looking at more durable benefits and efficacy, but with fewer side effects. ADCs is the antibody drug conjugates. So this is utilized in the specific targeting of antibodies with specific chemotherapeutic agents for more specific targeting. A lot of the time with chemotherapy, the challenge there is the side effects because it struggles to distinguish between healthy cells and cancer cells. Bispecific antibodies, the opportunity to bind 2 targets at once for more efficacious results. Targeted therapies, looking at specific genetic mutations. And the more we learn about cancer, the more that we can target these specific genetic mutations. Goes again. Radiopharmaceuticals as well. So this is looking again at using that more targeted radiotherapy approaches, using that sort of precision approach. And cancer vaccines, this is one we're quite excited about. This is sort of an evolving field within immunotherapy. This is harnessing the natural powers of the immune system for more efficacious results in cancer. So lots of exciting innovations that are working their way through pipelines right now and coming through approvals. The central nervous system, as I said, we've covered that across. I think that's been sort of a topic of interest for both the talks we had today. So that was super encouraging to see. And as we sort of said at the start, Edison, we recently produced quite a comprehensive thematic report highlighting why we're really excited in the CNS space. So if you haven't already, I'd recommend that you go ahead and give that a read, and we'd love to hear any feedback on that if you do. Ultimately, in short, what we're really looking at here is moving from purely symptomatic treatments to slowing and stopping disease, and then finally, hopefully in the future, curing or preventing. So this is the sort of step progress that we want to see us making in the future. And with one of the biggest, most common ones out there, that's Alzheimer's disease, we're already starting to see that take place. So with recent approvals from Biogen and Eli Lilly, these drugs are sort of considered a real breakthrough in the field, the first disease-modifying therapies for Alzheimer's. While super exciting and massively a breakthrough, there's lots of work to be done. Like I said, these slow down disease, but they don't necessarily halt or stop or even cure or prevent. So there's work to be done, but nevertheless, a key breakthrough just there. Schizophrenia, so again, making that distinction between sort of neurodevelopment diseases and neuropsychiatric conditions. Schizophrenia has been a relatively dormant field for quite a long time now. Most of the drugs that are used to treat it are sort of based off 1970s approval, so science that's over 50 years old. But we've got the new sort of Cobenfy drug that was recently approved. That was a product of one of the key deals, which has been talked about again earlier today. That represents one of the first new mechanisms of action for schizophrenia in over 50 years. That's super exciting, but again, there's still work to be done. There's a sort of subset of schizophrenia called treatment-resistant schizophrenia, which remains completely untapped. So that's sort of where we're looking for the next innovations just there. I've highlighted Parkinson's disease, and if you would join the webinar that I did on the CNS space or in this thematic, you'll see that that's sort of a personal interest of mine. Sort of yet to see the next big breakthrough, but certainly in earlier stage pipelines, we're seeing new mechanisms that are potentially preventative and curative as well. So that might be the next big breakthrough that we're keeping an eye out for. Finally, the third I'm going to be talking about today is metabolic diseases, so looking beyond obesity. Obviously, we've touched upon weight management, binge eating. Interesting to hear that sort of distinction just there. I wasn't actually totally familiar with that myself, but that was interesting to see. But it's sort of impossible not to read many healthcare headlines without sort of reading about these GLP-1s for weight management. And this has really highlighted quite a lucrative market, yet there's still a lot more to be done just there. Now, take the sort of estimates for market size there with a little pinch of salt. I think there's quite a lot of excitement when this all sort of blew up. But regardless, the point is that consensus is expecting an upwards trend. And in terms of what's yet to be sort of achieved in this space, there's still opportunities there to improve effectiveness. So looking to achieve higher degrees of weight loss than the current approved drugs. Minimizing side effects, while these drugs can be effective, they're often associated with, say, loss of muscle mass and other unpleasant side effects just there. They also rely on, at the moment, sort of injections, whereas ultimately there's companies out there that are looking to develop oral alternatives, or even with those injections, doing them dosing less frequently, and related indications as well. So we're learning a lot about these GLP-1s. It's actually not a new technology. They were around with the diabetes treatments sort of 20 years before. But we're starting to learn more and more about them, and we're seeing those applications now in cardiovascular, potentially CNS, other addiction, and liver disease as well. And I've highlighted at the bottom just there, probably one of the most exciting things to happen in the healthcare sector was the big sort of tug of war between Pfizer and Novo Nordisk for Metsera. This was, again, two companies that were willing to pay a lot of money for an exciting new obesity management drug. And what's exciting that I wanted to highlight there again is that this is fighting it out for UK-based science. And so this deal essentially transpired through from 7 billion to 9 billion to 10 billion in a bid to try and win what they thought was the next most exciting medicine in that space. So nice to highlight some UK science just there. So as I said at the start, what's exciting is not only is this a time where we're seeing this increased innovation, but we're also seeing this at the same time where big pharma companies are facing major patent cliffs. So essentially, these are big pharma companies with blockbuster drugs that are going off patent. And what we're seeing here is some projected sales for these drugs are starting to come down now, despite once being some of the best-selling drugs in the world, which essentially means that these big pharma companies are looking to replenish their pipelines with exciting new programs. Another way to visualize that is this sort of schematic that we've got just here. This has taken a select few sort of blockbuster drugs that are going off patent, normalized to 0 just there, with 0 being the year that they're going off patent. And you can literally see it as a sort of cliff edge just there, the fact that these drugs are going to be, not making as much money for the pharma companies as they once were, which means that they're looking to replace their pipelines with new and exciting technology. And that's particularly important because while a lot of the time we hear about pharma companies being sort of headline names when we see new drug approvals, the vast majority of new drugs originate from innovative, smaller, more nimble biotechs. So we're excited to see an increase, hopefully M&A activity just there, which is the sort of beating heart of the field. So to wrap up, as I said at the start, the healthcare sector, one of the biggest deratings in a long, long time, but fundamentals remain robust. Our sort of overall view is that what's exciting about right now and reasons to be optimistic is that we're at a time of highest innovation we've ever seen, low valuations representing an attractive entry point at the same time that pharma companies are looking to make deals. So hopefully I've convinced you some reasons to be a bit more excited in the healthcare sector. Got some examples of some recent deals just there. And yeah, that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Aaron. Got a few minutes for questions. If anybody wants to hit Aaron with any questions on that presentation or anything in general on healthcare, online or in the room. Gentleman there.
The problem I see for a smaller investor is the big money is going to be with the biotechs if they're taken over. But identifying which ones are going to make the big money is extremely difficult, to say the very least, for a small investor. And therefore, all one can do is invest in investment trusts or EFTs where they're specializing in small biotechs. Are there any?
Yes, is the short answer just there. It's often fairly been thought of as a risky sector, sort of high risk, high reward. Stock picking is obviously super challenging, even more so in this sector. But that's why a lot of people like to take the approach of investment trusts that are specifically focused on the healthcare space. They look to sort of achieve diversified portfolios to try and minimize that risk. But ultimately, that means that that reward's not going to be quite the same level as the sort of individual stock picking. So the short answer is yes, there's options out there, highly specialized healthcare focused investment companies. But yeah, it's always going to be that sort of risk reward trade-off as with all investing.
Have you got any particular investment trusts you think are more focused than others on the biotech sector, the early stage biotech?
Yeah, so
other parts of the healthcare market. Yeah,
of course. So there's a lot of names out there, but if I can take two that we work with, the two healthcare focused trusts that operate under OrbiMed, we've got Worldwide Healthcare Trust and the Biotech Growth Trust. Now, Worldwide Healthcare Trust, people may or may not be familiar, but they sort of take more of a global approach. They've got a slightly higher portion of pharma companies in their portfolios, and they've got sort of med tech devices as well, diagnostics. Biotech Growth Trust is an example of one that tries to specialize a bit more on those emerging biotechs. So yeah, there's some specialization out there. Yeah.
Their portfolios and what their investment strategies are. And
you can read our research as well.
Yes, Aaron, thanks for an excellent presentation. This is obviously a very dynamic, fast-moving area. I wondered how you and your colleagues at Edison will keep us up to date with it. Do you do sort of quarterly, 6-monthly updates or even sooner?
Sure, yeah. So the most of our work is the sort of individual stock analysis, but we do sort of pride ourselves in doing thematic reports as well. To be honest, we don't have a sort of super regular cadence with them at the moment, but that's certainly something we're looking to do. What we are trying to do to sort of inform people such as yourselves is to put out these thematic reports at the moment as we sort of seeing these trends emerge. So we had that CNS focused one in particular recently because we thought that was a really exciting time to be interested in something a bit more specific. And we had one out more recently as well, sort of similar to the talk I gave today, looking at reasons to be optimistic in the healthcare sector. If you subscribe to our research on our website, then you can stay up to date with whether it's individual stocks or the thematic side of things as well. But yeah, we call them thematics. Keep an eye out there.
Any other questions, Jen?
Thanks, Aaron, for your insightful presentation. Just a question. You mentioned AI earlier on. Just tell us about the impact of AI on all the companies and what do you think is going to happen in the next few years as the AI takes hold?
Sure, it's a great question, and ultimately, I kind of said it's there to play a role in all areas of drug development. And actually, what's interesting about my job is sort of trying to tease apart the companies that are claiming to use it as a bit of a buzzword versus those that are actually using it to sort of really take the next leap. Yes, the potential's big, it's super exciting, but it's sort of only going to be as good as the next big breakthrough that it achieves. In terms of some specific areas where it's finding application, it ranges from very early on in the drug development process, so advanced AI, to sort of model protein structures for very early stage drug development programs. That used to be highly challenging and a massive bottleneck in those early stage drug development programs. But now with AI, there's companies out there that are looking to model these highly intricate protein structures in three-dimensional space so that they can model sort of their potential drug candidates in there. That's the sort of early sort of stage side of things. If you then move to clinical trials, there's companies out there looking to use AI to really sort of develop and streamline clinical trial protocols. So whether that be sort of patient stratification or sort of more detailed analyses, that's ultimately should be leading to more productive clinical programs. And then even on the sort of approved side of things, you can sort of imagine AI even just what everyone might use it with day-to-day stuff, but a key strain with sort of NHS wait times is doctor's time and things like that. Even if things like AI can be used to sort of streamline their work processes, then that should ultimately be good for the sector from the sort of post-approval side of things.
Any more questions? Well, got one more. Sorry, I was pointing to the wrong gentleman. Yeah.
Do you think there are any remaining threats from the policy in the States in terms of Trump?
I'd say there's a good chance that, things are always going to be a bit unpredictable. I think, like I said, we're starting to see sort of clarity emerge. I think what we kind of saw was this threat of sort of most favored nations and things like that, and sort of negotiated drug prices. I think the healthcare market was struggling quite a bit because they didn't know what that would mean. Whereas actually, as we've started to see sort of Pfizer's come forward and sort of been making those arrangements with the administration, the share prices actually sort of went up. And that was encouraging to see that actually removing the ambiguity was a positive step, regardless of what intrinsically was actually happening, if that makes sense. So, but to answer your question, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be threats. Nothing too specific comes to mind, but hopefully as time goes on, we're going to see more sort of clarity, and that's only going to be helpful.
Can I ask you, please, a general question? Because obviously, while the presentation is actually wide-ranging and picking on certain aspects of healthcare, I mean, obviously, Edison, I think, does a good job of analyzing either specific investment trust or a particular theme. So this is kind of, wide-ranging, but it's very difficult to, apart from actually having this sentiment of things are looking up, to draw any specific conclusion.
No, that's helpful to hear. Definitely take that feedback on board. Yeah, all I can say is keep an eye out for the analysis, and yeah, hopefully we'll try and provide some more specifics going forward.
Right, thanks everybody. We're out of time. Pavlina, what do we...